Perfect. Thank God I don't have to use a microphone today. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with you. I'm going to start with just kind of who I am. I think that that's, you know, in the essence, that's what you're always selling anyway, right? You have skills, you have experiences, but ultimately, I think a lot of times who you are as a person, you need to find a fit that aligns with that. So I'm a Zag. I was born one. Both of my parents are GU grads. I'm a GU grad, my wife's a GU grad, my sister's a GU grad, I got a bunch of cousins that are GU grads. So I'm a little bit of a unicorn in the sense of when you go find a sitting athletic director in the United States, I don't think you're gonna find a lot of guys or women that have that kind of experience that's been consistent the way mine has. So I don't want you to see me as I'm gonna share my story, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a typical path or one that there's some sort of advantage to it. It's just an occurrence that happened for me that it kind of tells my story a little bit. I'm a Spokane kid, obviously, and I went to Gonzaga Prep. I'm a middle child. I got two older brothers and a younger sister. And what that means is I wasn't going to stay in Spokane. I was going to go do something different. I had to leave. So I went to Loyola Marymount University for my freshman year. It's a great experience. I loved it, but I was homesick. It was back before cell phones or before PCs for that matter. So I didn't have a lot of connection, and I really missed the Northwest as much as I did my family and being up here. So I transferred up to Gonzaga. I spent 3 years as an undergrad. My first year on campus was really difficult to connect. It was really the challenge as a transfer student. I actually didn't even live on campus. I lived just off campus with my brother. My sister was a freshman at GU at the time. So there was some of it, but I didn't really find my groove until my junior year. And my junior year is when I started volunteering in the athletic department. So I started to find some connection there, some purpose in terms of social outlet, but it also kind of started to teach me what my passion was, what I wanted to be around. That led to an opportunity. By the way, we're 8-20 in basketball that year. We were god awful. And what I did is I just started hanging around and meeting people, and it led to a work study job that summer, working before we had the Rudolph Fitness Center, before most of those facilities were there. The Martin Center had two big entrances that required a work study to sit in front of it and check IDs. That was my job, was to do that all summer. If you can imagine sitting in front of a door for 8 hours, 5 days a week, that about 20 people walked through. That was my job. But it did some important things for me. One, it was also the year that the Washington State Centennial Games was happening. Also, the Goodwill Games was happening in Spokane at the same time. Actually, it was just the Goodwill Games. The Centennial were the year before, I think. But I got to meet some people through that. Mike Roth, our previous athletic director, is the guy that hired me, because he at the time was the director of the Martin Center. He also was working with the Goodwill Games. So I got to, my first big foray into international sports was to build a scoreboard for the weightlifting in Spokane, which was basically taking adhesive numbers and putting them on little blocks for a scoreboard. And I only tell that story because that's how it kind of starts. You start doing something that's really entry. But I never imagined in that moment that relationship would lead to then the beginning of my senior year. The graduate assistant bailed on Mike at the last minute. He was supposed to come. Something happened. It had a family issue. Wasn't able to commit for the year. And all of a sudden, back then in particular, we were very short-staffed. It's like, hey, I need a grad guy. I know you have a year left. It's a 40-hour-a-week deal. It's really intensive. And, but I watched you work this summer. I think you can do it. What do you think? I'm like, yeah, I'm all in. It was great. So that's how I started in athletics. It was, you could consider it happenstance. Some people would say it was just good fortune, whatever it is. I don't think it was. It was about me taking my experience as a student and trying to find a place that met who I was. It connected my passion and my preference of how I wanted to spend my time and it allowed me an outlet. That led to getting a graduate assistantship. It led to a graduate degree. It led to a full-time job, a really glamorous one. My first job was the pool manager. Again, I mean, I'll tell you, when it comes to getting into college athletics or whatever professional sport, you take what opportunity is there. Because the other thing that happens with that is whatever that opportunity is, just work your ass off on it and do it as well as you can, because that's what impresses people. The worst mistake you can make is go and be the pool manager and want to be the facility director and work kind of hard at the pool and kind of get it done, but spend all your time trying to prove you can do this job. That doesn't work. You need to be really good at what they hire you for, and people will see that and you'll get rewarded for it. So those are my my tidbit. As far as what happened after that, it's kind of a blur, but I started in facilities. I worked at my next job was the assistant director of the Martin Center. Then I was the director of the Martin Center. Then I was assistant AD for facilities. Then 1997 happened. We had a change in athletic director. Mike became the athletic director. I moved into a different role that was basically all of our internal operations, which would be budget, etc. Am I good here?
Yep.
Okay. Budget, everything, basically everything internal, but compliance, which again, you just focus on what your job is and you work really hard at it. Try to be a good teammate, and good things happen. And in my case, I was also crazy lucky because when I started, I was the 15th full-time employee in Gonzaga Athletics, which means that we had, between all of our coaches, all of our administration, we had, I think it was 14 full-time. And when my job was created, it was the 15th position in the department. We're now at about 120. So I've had the opportunity to grow within my career at the same place, advance and create and have new opportunities without having to leave and then come back, or leave and go other places. So that's why when I say my story is a little bit unique, it's not a reflection on me, it's a reflection of my timing and the place I was. So I think back of the really big moments in my career in the development of me as a person, as a professional, and I attribute it to people. More than timing and anything else, it was the people that I was around, the mentors that I chose, the relationships that I was fortunate enough to be granted, but also the ones that I sought. That is an incredibly important part of my growth. It's in terms of my story. I know that singularly the most influential person in my professional life has been Mike Roth. You're gonna hear that name a lot tonight because he's my boss for 31 years. He was the only person I reported to until this fall. And the impact that he's had on this place is crazy. So Saturday night, we'll have the opportunity to honor him before the Texas tip. But it's those kind of things that drive me, because I know who he was for me. I want to be that for other people. I want to make sure that I'm accessible and I understand my responsibility to help others grow as young professionals, sometimes not even young professionals, but to see their best selves and be bold enough to tell them when they're not being their best selves. So, you know, I have a reputation of being a pretty direct communicator, and truth is important. It's important not to weaponize the truth either, but it's important to be able to receive that feedback as much as it is to give it. And I still receive it on a regular basis. I still gain insight from others who find fault in my actions. And it's important to be vulnerable enough to hear those. That's an important part of my experience also. So with that, I think that just kind of tells you who I am and how I got here. I had a cool moment this morning. A good friend of mine who's the head coach at Long Beach State was in town. He played down at Idaho last night. His dad was the Idaho coach. He was also, I worked with him for the first 10 years I was here. He was our head coach in '99 when we won the West Coast Conference and went to the NCAA and won our first games in the NCAA, went all the way to the Elite 8 game, which really started this big run. So we reminisced a little bit, and it makes me remember how much this place has changed. But I will tell you that one of the things that is a measurement of the people that make up the place is that it hasn't changed that much culturally. The success, the facilities, the budget, the outcomes, all that stuff has changed quite a bit. You guys have changed quite a bit. There's a lot more of you, and you're different people than the students used to be here. But at a core, I think at our core, we're still the same place, and that's something we're really proud of. So with that, I'm kind of here for you. So you tell me what you want to hear, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I can go first here.
Sure.
So when you were sitting at the table, letting people in and working the pool, was your dream to become the athletic director one day of this place?
I would love to tell you, yes, it was, and this was the grand plan. No, I had no idea. I wanted a job. I wanted to enjoy what I did. And I can't tell you how important that is, guys. It is really important to like what you do. Because when you like what you do, you don't worry as much about how much you get paid, and you don't worry as much about how much you work. I met my wife when I was a first year grad student, which means I was a second year into my graduate internship. I bet I worked 65 hours a week, probably, maybe a little bit more. And that pretty much was 12 months, because camps were just killers in the summer as well. I loved every minute of it. I never worried about how much I worked. I might have felt tired, but I never felt like it was overwhelmingly, pulling me away from enjoying life. I loved what I did. And that's a feeling that I'll always hold really close, because the reason I mentioned my wife, that's how we based our relationship. That's how she got to know me. That's who I was in that moment. And I don't work nearly that hard anymore. I have lately, and there's times where you are working that much, but it's the compatibility of knowing that that's the lifestyle I committed to. And frankly, that's one of the biggest things that we see with people that enter college athletics is, and it's been this way for a long time. It's not reflective on the current times, although it seems a little magnified. I bet we have a 50% washout rate upon entry level, because at least in the context of college athletics, and I think professional athletics might be worse, they don't pay great. They have long, awkward hours, nights, weekends, and they're not nearly as flexible in your schedule. So you got to work really hard. You work weird times. You don't make a bunch of money. Why do you do it? You do it because it's what your passion is. You do it because you want to be part of an organization or an activity that is something that you really enjoy being a part of, and that you can make a difference. And that's the one thing I will always correlate with somebody who is successful or not successful in our industry, is they make a difference. They make a difference to people around them. They make a difference to the people that they support. Most of the people that work in the athletic department don't get acknowledged for the contributions they make, because their job just doesn't really allow it. They're the people behind the social media that's creating the graphic, that's the cool thing. They're the one that has the idea for that. They're behind a camera doing things that make NIL happen for these students. They're trainers who are making sure people stay healthy. They're a strength coach that's behind the scenes, just making sure everybody's working hard at 6 a.m. There's just so many people that are part of the equation, but they don't get the external affirmation. They don't get accolades. They don't get to come and talk to you. But what they do is they get the affirmation that they know that they made that student athlete better, or they made that person more noticeable, or they're an SID that helped a guy get a national award because they did a great job with promoting him. And that's the stuff that intrinsically drives. It's the things that make you want to come back to work the next day.
Thank you.
Yeah, but the short answer is no, I had no grand plan. Yeah.
When you're bringing on new talent to your department, what are some of the qualities or attributes that you look for in candidates?
It's interesting. So Diane Nelson, our volleyball coach, recently announced her resignation. Diane is as she puts it, she's being promoted to mom. So I've been asked that question a lot in the last few days, and it's caused me to, because this is I'm new and I've been doing this forever, but I'm new in the seat, right? So it used to be my job was to say what somebody else was saying. Now I have to make sure it's my words.
Right.
So first and foremost, what matters to me is that we have somebody that shares our values, that understands what we are trying to do. We have, especially when you start talking about coaches. Coaches want to win. They're all driven. They all have the same mentality in that way. Otherwise, they wouldn't be coaching. But some of them are willing to do it at all costs. Some of them are willing to cut corners. Some of them are so competitively driven, they can't see the dignity of people around them because they just want to get to an outcome. So for me, that's the number one thing is, do they share our values? Do they care in the way that we care as an organization about how to do the job? The second thing I look for is competency, right? Do they have the skills that we need for them to do the job? And then the last thing, probably, well, not the last thing, but another thing is the drive. Do they have the energy? Do they have the passion? Do they care enough? Is it something that they are fully committed to doing? And then I think there's also, when I talk about the values, that's got a giant basket of stuff that comes with that, right? There's caring about in our context, caring about our students, caring about NCAA compliance, caring about being a good member of our Gonzaga community. There's just a ton of stuff that comes with that. And sometimes very difficult to measure. But you can usually tell within about the first 90 seconds of a discussion with somebody of where are they coming from. And it's really important for you guys, make a good impression. Make a good impression. Make sure that your introspection about yourself is honest. Share who you are, not just what I want to hear.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah.
What do you think the most important lesson you've learned over the years working in sports?
Oh man, there's a lot of those, and they're all mistakes. For me, there's a lot of big ones that I can think of, but for me, if I were to go thematically, I need to be a better listener. That's really important. Listen to what people have to say, and listen. Don't anticipate what they want. Listen to what their words are, and see if you can get there. I get going too fast sometimes. Some of the things that I'm very decisive, and that's helped me a great deal, because being indecisive is a huge crippling thing too. But sometimes you need to be contemplative enough that you've actually taken all the things into consideration and made those decisions. But in my case, I would say, most of the things that my immediate thought when you said that, they're more interpersonal. Being too short with somebody, getting angry when you needed to be calm, just that emotional maturity. Those are the things I think back to as mistakes I made. Now I think back of them contextually as a while ago, but I know I'm vulnerable to them today, so I still need to be careful. Heck, I've answered enough emails to students in the last week about tickets that I got to slow down and reread them sometimes to make sure my tone is okay, right? That's important. And it's really important for me to know that when I'm trying to accomplish something, that I trust the people around me to be my barometer. And sometimes the best intentions lose tone. So I don't know if that really answered your question, because there were some big fails there that I don't even want to talk about. But yeah.
As an athletic director, sir, how much emphasis do you put on trying to showcase all the sports, obviously, with the men's team getting most attention?
Yeah, great question. So, one of the things that, there have been a lot of things that have happened. I've been in the chair now for 10 weeks or something. It feels like 10 years. BYU's announced that they're leaving the West Coast Conference. So that opens all sorts of, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next as a conference? What are we going to do next if the conference makes a decision we don't like? Who are we and where are we trying to go to? And then you got the NCAA is in crisis right now. The Constitution is being completely revamped. We have a convention starting on Monday, that then there'll be another one in January. And it's a chaotic time in Division I athletics for sure right now, but really through the entire NCAA. The hardest part is to align your resources, your values, and your desires. Those are the three things that come in contrast with one each other, because there's no question we'd like to elevate everything to the highest possible level. So the first thing that I focus on when in direct, are we doing what we need to do to help the student athletes? Are we doing what we need to do to create an experience that's worthy of being a Division I athlete? Are we doing those things? And a lot of that stuff is outside of sport. A lot of that is in academics, in community, in mental health, in physical health. Are we doing those things? Once we've done that baseline, then we can start talking about what does that mean for each sport? Well, for a long time, again, I have the benefit of having been here in the building phases of trying to understand what that looks like. So we made a really intentional decision, and I say we a lot because Mike always included a lot of people in the conversation. I was blessed to be one of them. We invested in people first. Coaches were the most important component, because it doesn't matter how many scholarships you allocate or how many students you have, if you don't have good coaches and you don't have the infrastructure in place to teach and to support, then you're going to be really inefficient. Once you have resources in place for coaches, then you bring scholarship. Then you make sure that you're bringing the right quality of student, quality of athlete into a program. So that's the second piece. Operationally is really important to support both of those, so you have the money to go recruit, so you can actually travel and do those things. But then you have facilities. That's the third piece. So when I look at what's achievable as part of the equation, but it's really not the be all and end all. Basketball at Gonzaga is emphasized above all others because it's emphasized that way in our conference. It's the most tradition that the university has. Those things correlate. I'm not sure that one drives the other, but it's a fact. But it's also the revenue generator. So one of the things that's also happened in the context of the last 15 years for sure, but really 20, is the universities, we've spent a lot more money in athletics than we used to. But the university's incremental increases kind of stopped. It plateaued. And so it was new revenues that drove growth in athletics. And so that growth in athletics is obviously you feed your revenue producer, right? You put things, you invest, you look at your return on investment when you do that. Sometimes that's you take the student equation out of it. You make sure that the student part is equitable, that the students experience, that you're supporting them in the non-athletic ways, in the ways that you can on an equitable basis. But then athletically, where do you put more travel money? Where do you put more recruiting dollars? Where do you emphasize your facilities? In most cases, that's somewhat strategic. In some cases, it's happenstance because you got a donor that steps up and says, you know what? I care about X, and I want to commit to that. And a lot of times when you have great coaches, if you do that right, they drive some of that revenue too. So I'm talking around it a little bit because I'm not sure I have a direct answer for you. I think that for me, it's about conference affiliation drives a lot of those decisions. It's about making sure that you can be successful and put student athletes in a position to be successful in that context. And then when you can find exceptional excellence, you really feed that. And you try and make sure that you have the greatest possible return on that investment. You bet. Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of ways to get into college athletics, like, different departments, facilities, or even, ticketing or whatnot. Would there be like a top choice for you? Or would there be like if a student was going in to say, eventually wanted to rise up into the athletic department, would be the best way for them to do that? Or is it just kind of where they fit in?
Yeah, I think first of all, find what you always want to shoot for, what you think you're going to enjoy. That's the first place you look. But the first opportunity is the one I would take, because again, once people see you for the virtues of your work ethic and your developing skills, they'll move you around as opportunities pop up. There's different areas. I mean, right now, creative arts is a huge part, right? If you want to, the growth of social media, the demands of NIL, in video and graphics are really, really significant in college athletics. At least those are real areas of need. And there's not it's competitive because that's one of the things that we get challenged by all the time. Those are skills that are very that translate quite a bit across business. So you're going to have options. All of a sudden, it goes back to that earlier thing. Hey, I love what I do. It's great. I could make twice as much, work half as much if I went and worked for Microsoft. So sometimes those are the ones that, for me, are the most challenging, because how do you find that person with that passion that's willing to work in the concert and in the culture that you're working in? So that's one. I think there's academic support and compliance will always have a lot of need. Student services generally, but the emerging technologies are probably where I would say are the greatest opportunities, because there's not a bunch of old guys like me that know how to do it, and there's a lot of need that's developed. Yeah.
I'll just say, I know like every day might not look the same, but kind of, I guess, what typically happens like in a day.
Oh, I can't wait to have a typical day. First of all, I have senior staff of 10 people. And so that is my team. And when I say that, is they're the ones that I count on that exercise the responsibilities of the department and hold, basically my fate is in their hands. And on top of that, I do directly supervise 4 sports. We have 14. Shannon Strahl, our deputy athletic director, supervises the other 10. She's got a huge job. So most of my time is spent with those people. My best days are when I have direct contact with student athletes. I don't get a lot of it, but I get a little bit. So meetings is the short answer, is a typical day, but also meetings with benefactors, with other administrators on campus. I'm a member of the executive leadership team, so that has time commitments that come with it. And then there's all our events. Presence at our events is a big part of what I enjoy in my job. But I would say that there is no typical day, in that there's routine, but typical means that there's predictability, and there's just not. There's a lot of volatility, and that's what's cool about this job. No day is the same, no week is the same, and no season is the same. I can't imagine having this. I would not enjoy living in an environment where it was the same thing over and over. And so right now I'm finding most of my time recently has been spent trying to manage other people's expectations and set and demonstrate the good work that's being done by a lot of people in our department. They're burning it at both ends really hard to try and deliver services. But man, there's angry people right now. There's a lot of frustration in our world, a lot of pent up things people feel like they've missed, and now they're coming back, but they're not quite where they want them yet. So there's anxiety, and so yeah, that seems to be. I got a small sample size. It's only been a couple months, but it's been interesting for sure. You bet. Yeah.
At your position, what kind of interaction are you getting outside of just the Gonzaga community, more in the Spokane community?
How much interaction?
What kind of stuff are you doing in position to involve the community as a whole?
Sure. Yeah. So there's quite a bit. I work. So Learfield is our multimedia rights holder, which means they're the ones that go out and sell sponsorships with community members, businesses, etc. I spend a lot of time with them and their partners. So I do go to lunch a lot with different businesses in town. I went down and saw Rob Curley the other day and spent a couple hours with the Spokesman Review just to talk about relationship. I've got a meeting next week with KHQ and their leadership team. The engagement of our community is what makes Gonzaga special. I mean, you guys are awesome as students. Our student body support is spectacular, but there's other places that have spectacular student body support too. What makes Gonzaga kind of confusing to people is how we can be we're surrounded by 3 other Division I schools that are in relative proximity, and we are like the darlings of Spokane. And if you go to a basketball game, men's or women's, you'll see a whole bunch of Coug alums and Husky alums and everything else, and they're wearing all Gonzaga stuff. That doesn't happen everywhere. It's because this community has embraced what we do. We brought a lot of joy to a big part of this community, and that's kind of my job, is to help foster that, recognize it, and grow relationships and be in connection with people that are important civic leaders and movers in the community.
How does name and image likeness affected your duties?
You know, name, image, and likeness is one of those, like, it's like that tsunami you saw coming for, like 3 years, and it was just building. And then the NCAA literally on June 30th said, okay, we give up. Tomorrow it starts. But we're not going to give you any guidance. We're not going to really give you any rules. And if anybody knows anything about the NCAA, they have rules for everything. And it's very prescriptive and very precise. And they just said this whole bylaw is going to go away. It has fundamentally changed the way we do compliance, in the way we look at it, because it's taken the objective and turned it into subjective. So it's challenged us to make sure that we have a different way of looking at compliance, because now it's interpretive and we can't rely on somebody else to tell us. The other thing is, we are in a state that doesn't have a state law, which magnifies that. So not only do we have the ability to not have to be following a prescriptive state law, but now we do have to create our own policy. And that policy required us to make it in 24 hours, or that timeline required us to make it in 24 hours, which it was well contemplated. It wasn't a surprise. But it was, now as soon as you put that on paper, that becomes the rule of law for us. And we need to make sure that we're in a place where that's going to advantage us and be something we can deliver on, and be something that we can make sure that we never violate, because that becomes then it becomes an NCAA violation, right? Or it becomes a bigger issue, because there are the basic tenets in NIL are no pay for play and no inducement. So you can't have you can't go out to a potential recruit and say, hey, come to GU, you're going to get a car, you're going to get, casino deal, and you're going to get whatever, all the burritos you want to eat. So that's lit. That's it. Those are the only rules. So for what it did for us is we had to create a whole infrastructure around something that gave us no guidance. And Ryan Oliver is a rock star and has done an amazing job. We had to get into a space where we understand now the group licensing, which group licensing simply means, now that you two are both teammates and you want to enter a deal together, now a company can sign one deal with you rather than, we can partner with a company that allows it. Now that company can go to you and not have to have two different agents to deal with or anything else. We're just getting ready to announce that, I think tomorrow or the next day, but that's going to allow for passive revenue for people. Now you can buy people's jerseys with their names on the back, that kind of thing. Now they can do video game deals if they want to. But then we have our multimedia rights partner who actually pays us a great deal of money for the rights to use our logos. That's separate, that's different. Now, when you go buy a shirt that's got the logo on it, that's a licensing deal. We have a different company that manages that. But when you put co-brand with another company, that right actually we've assigned to another company. So now we have to work with them to figure out, how does NIL work with that? We had it all figured out, and then they tried to change it yesterday. I'm trying to navigate that still. So those are the complications. It's a cool thing though. NIL is something that is a reaction to stupid decisions that were made 15, 20 years ago by the NCAA, very narrow-minded determinations. And so we're seeing basically 15, 20 years worth of evolution dumped into one thing right now. So it's culture shock. But also we're learning about the market. Okay, not necessarily at Gonzaga. We've got a lot of high profile guys that have opportunities, but generally speaking, there was this huge belief that there was going to be $1 million right now for anybody that's got huge social media following. It really hasn't played out that way. There's a lot of money being exchanged. It's a lively market, but it's not the same kind of deal. The other thing that we've also learned through this, again, nationally, not necessarily locally, large corporations don't like to really put a lot of emphasis on individuals. They like big brands because they're insulated from individual behaviors that way. So, you know, and I think that the guy that was telling me about it used Richard Sherman was like the safest guy in the world. He was like the perfect individual spokesman because he had such a Stanford guy, solid credentials, good citizen, everything else. And then last year happened, you know. And so he's like, okay, if he's not safe, how can you invest in an 18 to 22-year-old? I mean, there's a lot of hesitancy from big brands. So that's some of the stuff that we've learned about it. How does it affected us? I don't think it's really affected us. It's a lot more work. It puts a lot of pressure on our external staff to create content. So graphics, things that are specific, photos, video, making it available. We have conduits. So we have to partner with companies to create these conduits so the student athletes can grab that footage and use it to build their brand. We have classes. We have a partnership with the business school. We've had opportunities that Jacob Rooksby at the Dean Rooksby of the law schools helped us out to try and navigate some intellectual property rights issues to make sure that we're putting these students in a place. But what I think it really did was it put back a whole bunch of pressure on students, not pressure, responsibility on us to educate students, because if they aren't eyes wide open, you got taxes, you got contract law, you've got all these different aspects that, hey, I'm just here to play a sport. And now I'm a business guy. I'm not ready for that. And we weren't ready for them either. So we did it really quick. Basically, it turned into NBA rookie camp. We used a lot of the same companies that the NBA uses to try and help the rookies get up to speed. And then for our more high profile guys, they've got agents to help too. So it is a big culture change.
I got one more for you.
Yeah.
So in the last year, we've heard people talk about the struggles with COVID and what they did to overcome that. What have been some of the biggest challenges coming back with fans coming back from COVID while the pandemic's still kind of going on?
That's a great question. I'm emotionally exhausted from this question. Thank you. Because it's real. I'll tell you, it's a little raw, but I'll just say it. We have basically spent the last 22 months teaching people to be fearful of each other. This tells you that I'm a risk to you. It's just a visual reminder. And it's true, in the true essence, of disease transmission. The other thing that we've done is we've taken things away from people, their independence, their choice, their joy, and when I say we, it's the virus that did it. It's not the governor. It's not a political statement. It's a reality. You guys all had last year, whether you're a freshman this year and it was your high school senior year, or whether you were a student here, you had lots of stuff deprived from you. And that hurts, right? That leaves a lot of emptiness for people that they're trying to get back. And they want it back now. And we're not there yet. When we have fans come in the building, this is the way I describe it. We got three types of people. You got people over here who are pissed off they have to wear a mask and they angry that we make them show their vaccine card. We got people over here that are incredibly angry at every one of these guys and everybody in between because their mask's down too low, or and there's no helping these two groups, because there's nothing that I can say or do. I mean, how many mask on signs can we put in the kennel? How many PA reads can we do? How many times can we remind somebody? How many times can we ask somebody? They're never going to be satisfied because it's just not fully compliant. And then there's everybody in the middle who's navigating, but they're kind of impacted by this too. And I'm hoping that over time, what we're going to see is it's going to make these people are going to lighten up a little bit. And these people are going to go, okay, I'm going to make an active choice that if I'm going to be here, I'm going to tolerate some of this. And then we're stuck in the middle to make sure we continue to remind and do everything we can to help people be compliant. One of the least favorite things that I've done for a lot of reasons since I've been here is I talked to the kennel club the other night right before the game. And I say it was my least favorite. I loved having the microphone and having a chance to talk to the kennel club. I just wanted to thank everybody for being in there and for all the enthusiasm and the excitement that they were bringing, and the fact that, you know, here we are at an exhibition game and everybody's just, I mean, I could see the joy. I mean, I had tears in my eyes when the band started playing at Craziness, because it was an emotional moment to feel that energy come back in the building. And the students, when the cheerleaders started doing backflips, I thought, you know, we just won the national championship or something, because the energy just came up. And it's like, man, after last year sitting in that building and listening to crowd noise piped in and looking at empty seats, it was like, wow, I remember how important this is now. So it was a difficult thing for me to look up there and have people feel like they're being chastised. But hey, remember, put your mask on. We need your mask on. And we do need your mask on, because you're on TV. You are the example that everybody's going to look at. And more importantly, if your mask's not on, we're going to have a whole bunch of people that are going to be writing those letters, and maybe not to us, maybe to the governor, saying, see, I told you so. They can't be in a space like this and be compliant. And so for me, that sucked. But that is the essence of where we're at. And I hope, against all hope, probably, that, you know, based on trend lines and the reality of this virus and people's unwillingness to help stamp it out, it's going to be with us the whole season. We're going to be dealing with masks the whole year. That we're going to be asking people to comply. And hopefully we can do what Gonzaga has proven in an unbelievable way. If you mask, if you're vaccinated, we don't have COVID. You know, we have very little incidence on this campus. Sure, it's going to happen, but the incidence rate is so low. If we could get Spokane Valley to do what Gonzaga does, there wouldn't be any COVID left.
Good luck.
Yeah, no kidding.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
So with a lot of NCAA realignment going on in terms of conferences, and as you mentioned, BYU, how much do you and your team discuss how your role in the conference works, or should you guys lead the conference? Those type of discussions, do you guys have those, or do you guys just push it off?
Oh no, we have to have those discussions. We have to contemplate the future. And we are actively, constantly evaluating, trying to figure out where to go next, what the right play is, how can we influence the outcomes. All those things are an important part of what we do. Now, having said that, what are our options too, right? That's the next part of that equation. The first thing is, what is the West Coast Conference going to do? You know, and thankfully, Dr. McCullough sits on the expansion committee, so he's one of the prime voices in the room. So we know we have great voice with the West Coast Conference in terms of what this is going to be like. As far as what does it Division I look like, that's the bigger question for me. Conference alignment in the current construct, that's one question that we can navigate. Who's going to come in and replace BYU? What does that mean? But what if Division I changes into 3 portions and the West Coast Conference somehow slides into the second half of it, and that means that we don't get to play in the NCAA tournament anymore, or we don't get an automatic bid out of the West Coast Conference, or we lose some of those opportunities that maybe we have. That's the question I worry about. And so we need to have those things done in concert. We need to understand what this new Constitution means. And then once the Constitution's in place, we need to understand what is Division I going to do with itself, and we need to be on the right side of that line. That's the most important part of my job right now, is to make sure that we're strategically looking for where is that line going to be drawn and make sure we're on the right side of it. Well, I'm not terribly concerned about it, but it's really important that we do that. And that'll inform some of those other conference conversations.
Any other questions? Let's go.
All right. Thank you for coming out. You bet. I appreciate your time, guys. Thanks. Great question.
Thanks for coming.